Normalizing Abnormality. I saw an article and it was quite surprising because it was a man who worked with construction workers, especially construction workers and migrant workers from out of the country. And they were doing some gardening work in a wealthy woman's yard. And there happened to be fruit trees in her yard. And she noticed that some of the workers, when they went on their lunch break, had picked some of the fruit off the tree, rubbed it off or rinsed it off with their water bottles that they had with them, and begun to eat it. And she waved the foreman over and said, they're eating the fruit out of the tree. And he said, oh, I apologize. I didn't even think about them, taking the fruit off your tree and eating it. And she said, no, I'm not worried about them eating the fruit off the tree. She said, it's not safe. And he looked at her and she said, yeah, we need to get our food from the grocery store where they've inspected it and they know that it's safe. It's not safe to just pick a piece of fruit off of a tree. And he didn't know how to respond to her because, of course, in many other parts of the world, they don't have the idea that the only food that is safe is food that has been inspected and tagged and weighed and processed on, farms and then sent to a grocery store. Farmers markets are ubiquitous and people picking fruit off of trees is normal and common. So it just shows you how abnormality can be normalized. And I was watching a show on Showtime, which I believe it might be discontinued now. I'm not even sure. It's called The Mayor of Kingston. And the very opening of the show, it was talking about how people can get used to being institutionalized. It can get used to being in prisons. And it reminded me of a meme I saw where slave children, after slavery was repealed, were standing at the gate of a plantation and they were holding on to the bars when the plantation gate was completely open. They could literally have walked out. But because they were conditioned that they couldn't leave, they were holding on to the bars, standing right next to an open gate. And that also reminds me of a couple of other things. There's a story that is very commonly told, and I've seen it on a bunch of YouTube videos. Actually, two of them. One is about the elephant. So when elephants are very, very young and they're being trained to be in the circus or to perform agricultural duties, many of the trainers will take the leg of the elephant, tie a chain around the leg of the elephant, and tie it to a sturdy tree. And so the baby elephant will pull against that chain. Of course, he can't break that chain. And so he gets used to the fact that no matter how much he struggles, there's no breaking this chain. But by the time they become adults, they replace the chain with a very flimsy rope, and sometimes they'll tie the rope to something as insignificant as a lawn chair. And that elephant, which is now tons and has the ability to break, down trees and barrel through big, huge obstacles, will stay tied to a lawn chair because the mental shackles are what's keeping it in place. And that's also reminiscent of an experiment that I heard of. I think it was called the 5 monkeys experiment. And so these researchers put 5 monkeys in a cage and they put a ladder in the center of the cage. They put a pack of bananas at the top of the ladder. And of course, as soon as the monkeys saw the bananas, when the researchers left out, they would begin to climb the ladder to get to the bananas. But they soaked these monkeys in the coldest water that they could find. And every time they began to climb the ladder. So all of these 5 monkeys, in a sense, got traumatized by this freezing cold water. And so then, after they'd done this several times and the monkeys stopped trying to climb the ladder, they would replace one of the monkeys with a new monkey. And of course, the first thing that new monkey began to do is climb up the ladder to try to get to the bananas. And those old monkeys that were in there prior to the new monkey's arrival would yank him off the ladder and beat him up. And they would replace the old monkeys until there was a group of 5 new monkeys that had never been soaked with cold water. But they would continue to beat up the new arrivals that began to climb up that ladder, even though by the end of the experiment, none of the 5 monkeys in that cage had ever been soaked with cold water. They were doing what they had been conditioned to do, keeping the other monkeys away from the bananas. Now, I bring all of this normalizing abnormality up because we live in a system in America, in many parts of the world, where patriarchy has been normalized. But patriarchy is a new system. It's not one that has been here since the beginning of time. In the beginning of time, societies were egalitarian. You didn't have that many people, so men and women fought, men and women hunted, men and women gathered. They did all the things that needed to be done to make the tribe survive. And men and women were put into positions of leadership. Men were not seen as inherently better leaders, better providers, better protectors. None of that was the case. People did what was needed to be done to make the tribe survive. But we've had a conditioning, and the people who have been conditioned have been made to believe, like that elephant, like the monkey, that they can't change and that changing is going to get them punished, and that they have to participate and perpetuate the system that they were born into. But more and more people are seeing that this is only conditioning, and the bars to the plantation is open, and they can actually walk out into freedom. And I hope that you do walk into